Okay, so we've got this chocolate sales data set, which I chose because it seems like it's got a good mix of some date time stuff that we could use, amounts, it's not super huge in terms of the number of columns, but it's got some good things that we could maybe merge on, um, and like aggregate in different ways. So pretty straightforward. First thing we are gonna do, there's two different ways to access this. As you just saw. First way is we can like import Kaggle Hub and grab stuff here. I don't think I have Kaggle Hub installed. So this is probably a slightly easier way to do this. I'm just going to download the data as a zip. Um, and I am going to pull it out and drop it in here. Um, so here are my chocolate sales. We've got salesperson, country, product, date, amount, and boxes shipped. Probably a little easier to view this on Kaggle. Just like to get a rough overview of what it is. Highly recommend whenever you like see a data set to kind of explore even like before you get into the coding side. Just like what does it look like? What is the source saying about it? What can we tell about it from the source? I think in this case, this is pretty vague. A comprehensive overview of global chocolate sales performance from 2022 to 2025. Questions I would have is like, is this a real data set? Who made it? What company is this? Stuff like that. We're just kind of doing a let's play around with the data and see what happens. But if we were doing this for like a business purpose or something like that, we would want to make sure we've got like a solid methodological foundation going into this and making sure that what we think it's saying, any of the assumptions we're making about this data are correct. All right, so we've got that. We've got our four, one, two, three, four, five, six columns. I guess it also says it right there. There's also a PDF, so we'll take a look at that. Wow, they already have like a little dashboard that they made with this. Very fun. I don't know what program this was made in, but it's nice to sort of like this could be some inspiration for what we do with this. Got average sales, year over year growth. For if you wanted to do a dashboard like this, it would be in something like Plotly. I think you could do that with Plotly and Dash, or even with Streamlit for some of this. Um, so very helpful always to like just poke around, see if there's any like inspiration or helpful things that might be good to take a look at before uh, getting into the analysis. Okay, and then I am actually going to drag this over to a folder itself. Yes, love chocolate. I'm glad it sounds delicious to you too, Maram. Um, so let me drag this over. And we'll just drop it in there. We'll put it in our data folder, to keep things really clean. And I'm gonna rename it just to make it super simple to import, remember the name of. I don't have to like be going back and forth about it. So there's my data, and we can just take a look at it and make sure that it looks the same as the one we previewed, and it does. Awesome. Okay. So now we are going to import this into pandas. And something really helpful when we're making data pipelines is, or just like kind of showing our analysis to maybe less technical stakeholders, is to use Markdown. So I'm going to start adding some Markdown into this notebook. With Markdown, we've kind of seen a lot of this before. Um, There we go. This feels zoomed in enough? I do not want to install it. With Markdown, we've seen a lot of this before, but two two hashtags or pound signs, whatever you want to call them, is usually my default. Technically, what this looks like, if you just say like chocolate, it'll show up like that, and then if you just do, oops, that is code, not Markdown. If you do like that, it'll be really big. Um, so if you do no pound signs at all. It's just like small. And then from there, if you do 1 pound sign, it's big, 2 pound signs, we'll just like keep going down the line. Um, Mark down. 2 pound signs, it's smaller and it just keeps getting smaller. So this helps you create like subheads and heads. And then in most Jupyter Notebook editors, you'll be able to like collapse different parts of it, which can be really easy if you're just focused on one part. You want to run everything. I'm so glad everyone loves the chocolate. Right after Valentine's Day, so it felt appropriate. Um, okay, so all that said, we are gonna make like a top level, um, even before we do this, actually, um, a top level title. We're gonna name it Chocolate Sales Analysis. And then underneath here, maybe we start with like, um, import packages. Um, kind of big. I kind of want to make that a little smaller. It's not very important to import our packages, but um, or we can do import packages um plus load data. Maybe that's a good title there. Um, and then we can do import pandas as PD. That's going to be our main package. Um, Oftentimes, NumPy ends up getting used a lot in these sorts of things. So I'm just going to import it preemptively, just in case we can take it out later if we want to. And then finally, I'm going to define our data frame. So that'll be pd.read CS, cannot spell CSV today, CSV. And that'll just be data slash chocolate.csv. All right, and then we can take a look at our data and make sure it's still what we're expecting. Nice, way nicer than looking at it in just like our little text editor as a CSV file. We've got our salesperson, country, product, date, amount, and boxes shipped. Um, so those are kind of the basics. We're gonna refer to the assignment thing and just think about what we want to do first. Okay. Data conversion and cleaning. We want to convert some dates, convert any numbers, um, check for nulls. Okay. So when we pull in a data set, what are some like good pandas functions to preview it? Anyone have things that they've been using? Info, nice. Yeah, absolutely. We can do df.info here. I love that one. Oops. There we go. Um, and it will give us an overview of how many entries are in it, what the columns are, um, how many of them are non-null, which is really important to see if we have missing data. Um, any other ones that folks use? Describe, nice. Yeah, absolutely. Describe is another great one. Um, it lets you see for any like numeric columns. Um, what are like the summary statistics for it. So here we can see for boxes shipped, there were 3,282 boxes shipped. The mean for that column was 164 for each sale. Head, also another great one to use. So that'll just show us the first 5 rows in our data set. So a little bit cleaner than just like pasting in DF and showing the entire data frame at once. Um, Anything else? All right. The only other one that I would maybe think about is dot tail, just to see the end of the data set. Sometimes there's like really big discrepancies in the start and the end. Does the same thing as head, just shows you like the last 5 instead. Um, in this case, I think that probably just to like have it at the top. df.info is going to be great to kind of like refer to as we go through here. So maybe we rename this import packages, um, load, and preview data. Um, all right. So we've got our info. Um, what should we do next? Any thoughts? Format? Yeah. How should we format it? Start cleaning? Yeah. Get it all formatted, clean, all of that. What would be your first step to start cleaning or formatting? Drop duplicates. Nice, nice. That's a good one. And date time, both good ones. I'm gonna write notes here so that we don't forget. And I'm gonna make a new section that is titled Data Formatting and Cleaning. Um, so we've got drop duplicates and we've got date time. So let's start with just dropping duplicates. So something I like to do is um just like length of our data frame. You can see this here. There's 3,282. And Miriam also, yeah, change data types to proper values. Another really good one. Um, all right. So we've got 3,282. I kind of like to see sometimes like, is the length any different if we drop our duplicates? And it is the same. So this means that our data set doesn't have any duplicates. If we were to drop duplicates, they would not drop, they wouldn't drop anything. But a helpful thing to check. So I'm going to title this, I'm going to use Markdown. I'm going to be a little cleaner about it than I sometimes am in our sessions. And this will just say check for duplicate values. And the easiest way to like kind of is to see if they're equal to each other. Um, so is the length. I'll add this in Markdown too. Um, is the length of the data frame the same regardless of whether we drop duplicates? Um, Nice. Okay, so we've got our drop duplicates. Great call, Jenny. I'm going to add that handle null values to here. Um, all right, so we've dropped our duplicates. That part's done. And turning empty values to none. Another good one. Turn empty values to none. Or NaN. Write that too. Okay. So we checked for our duplicate values. Our next thing that we've got on here is date time. So I'm gonna add another markdown, change date columns to date time. And then we'll add some Python code under here. Um, and okay, so this is probably the column we want to transform into date time, right? If we go back to the add another one down here, df.head as a reference, we can see this is what it looks like now. So we probably want to make sure that this can like be handled as a time value. Maybe you want to like compare it to some other time, like how long ago was it? How many months ago did this sale happen? Maybe is something that you would want to do. So we are going to use, I'm going to name this a date time column. Um, and I want to say this is PD dot to date time. That looks like a real function, uh, or a real method. Let's just see if this works. So we're making a new column named date time out of the date. No, does not like that. Okay. So interesting. Okay. So, if we look at these dates, well, let's look at this error first for a second. Um, So we're getting a value error, and it's saying that the time data 27 for 2022 doesn't match this format. So this is the default format that it's looking for, or it's assuming. It's Pandas is making this assumption, and it does not match that. This is because these are not like American style dates. And yes, exactly, Jenny. It's day, month, year, which is slightly different. So what we're gonna do is pass this format. We're gonna use this error and like the details that it's giving to pass this format, and we're just gonna modify the format it gave here to match the one that Jenny identified in here. So what we're gonna do is, here we go. So this is our format parameter, and I'm gonna copy this guy to start because this is the default format that it's using. And this is month, day, year. And I'm just gonna swap this to day, month, year. And let's see if that works. Beautiful. Okay. And let's look at the head of our data frame again just to see how that went. Awesome. So now we have a new date time column, and it is correctly showing and interpreting the days. It's swapped it, like visually speaking, into year, month, day here, which is kind of like a standard. I like to use it for file organization. That's the order of dates that I prefer when I'm like naming things. Um, in this case, that's just like how it's being visually represented. It's actually like a Python date time object. And we can check this by scrolling back up to our df.info and looking at these types. Um, and now you can see we have a new column named date time. It has all non-nulls, and its type is date time. So we've got our dates cleaned up. Any questions about that, converting things to date format? Okay, awesome. And I see Jenny, you've got one more thing in the chat. I'm gonna add that to our list. So we've done our date time, change data types to proper values. And I think this is also this kind of like goes along with that in terms of the data types. So right now, if we look at our df.info, we've got columns, and this is like, again, telling us what type this is. Object pretty much means string in this case. These are all strings. But the boxes shipped are fine. The amount, though, which is what Jenny pointed out, and what I think also Merrim is referring to as well in terms of changing them to proper values, is an object. It is not a number. Um, if we look at what this looks like in the head again, we can see it has a dollar amount. It has commas. These are not things that we like to put. Yes, Jenny, exactly. It should be a float. So I am going to add a new little markdown thing here. And we'll say convert amount column to float. Um, if you want to make something look more like code in your markdown, which is what I'm doing here to identify this column name, you can use these like I forget what they're called. They're under the little squiggly line on your keyboard if you have a North American keyboard. Backwards ticks, maybe. They're not quite quotation marks. They're in a different place. But if you Google like markdown formatting, you'll find all sorts of fun things like that that you can use to make your markdown pretty and formatted the way you want. Um, so converting our amount column to float. So we can use, does anyone remember what method we might be able to use here to convert these? We could use a regex. Yeah, that's one way to do it. Um, I'll add that as one method. Anyone else? Replace. Yeah. NumPy. NumPy. Really not sure how you say that. It's interchangeable as far as I'm concerned. Um, okay. Yeah, these are all really great. So I'm gonna start with I'll start with the replace, I think. Actually, I'll start with a regex. I have a way that I think I have one way that I'm more used to that we'll get into in a second. But I think it's important to kind of explore these options and the different ways we can get into that. I just am going to be doing some Googling to help me figure that out. So for a regex, I'm gonna, and hopefully this is also helpful to like mirror what your process might look like in doing this. Like you were unlimited Googling like ability for all of this. So it's use the resources, all the resources at your disposal. Okay, so what we're looking for is the first thing I'm going to do is regex 101. We talked about this when we went over regexes. I'm going to make sure this is like in a Python flavor here, and I'm going to add some test strings. Um, to kind of see. And then what this is going to do is basically allow us to like test out a different regex. So I think the dollar sign might be reserved, so like a means something else in regex. So we're going to put a backward slash, and that way it'll find the dollar sign. Um, and then the second thing we need for a regex pattern is like what are we trying to capture? So we've got, I want to say this is D. Perfect. Okay. We've got our dollar sign and then we've got our digit. We want all of the digits. We can see there's not actually any more digits, but if there were, like, I'm gonna just test this if it said like 56. We want to make sure it's grabbing all of them. If we just had the D without the plus sign, it wouldn't do that. And then we'll grab a comma, which let's see if it's a special character. Nope, it's showing up. I'll zoom in here too so folks can see a little better. Um, and is it not? When I zoom in, it's not highlighting correctly. Does that work? Yes, okay. There we go. We'll keep it right there. Um, and then after that, we want some more numbers. And then a period, and then we want the rest of the numbers. Okay, so this is grabbing everything, but we only wanted to grab the numbers. We're kind of like establishing the pattern of like what this looks like. Um, but we only want these bits. We want to like capture specific things. So that'll be our one capturing group, and then we'll capture everything on the other side of the comma, which will be our numbers over here. Okay. Um, any questions thus far about just like the way regex works? Um, Personally, I'll be very frank. While I think it's very helpful to like know these things and practice them, um, regex is one of the things that I find AI and very helpful for. Because it is kind of like very syntax related, more than it is critical thinking. So if you can sort of define what you need, that's the critical thinking part. And then AI is usually if you use Claude or ChatGPT, anything will be pretty good at spitting out a good regex capture group for you. But again, still very helpful to like go through it, understand what each of the pieces means, even if you're not writing those pieces, I think is really important. Um, okay, so we've got our capture group, and now I'm going to remind myself um how to use regex capture group um to capture something in a pandas data set. How to use regex capture group to get info from pandas column. Okay, let's combine it with replace. And there we go. All right, we're gonna take a page from this. Um, and I'm gonna name this a new column. I'm gonna name it amount clean. And we're gonna set this new column amount clean equal to df amount, and then we're gonna replace we're gonna start with this. Um, but we're actually gonna capture the opposite because we want to capture like specific things to replace, not the things to not replace. So we're gonna capture our comma, and we're going to keep everything else. We're going to capture our dollar sign and our comma, and we're going to keep everything else. And we're just going to replace that with nothing. And that feels, let's see if this works. I'm not super confident about this, but um, it did seem to work. So let's take a look. Did not. Whoa, we've got our amount clean. I forgot about that. Okay, that did not work. I don't want to spend too much of y'all's time with me figuring out why this regex isn't working. I'll give it one more shot. And then we'll move on to like a replace or we'll move on to a NumPy solution and then the solution that I would probably approach this with. Does anyone, before I keep Googling, does anyone have thoughts on how to make this regex um filter things out correctly with this amount? Miriam, I'm sure your brain is very complex and talented and skilled and could learn regex. Absolutely, but it is very complicated. It is a little bit of an intense endeavor, I think. But very helpful if you do need it. All right, I'll give it one more shot. Um, let's see. Okay, so this is just grabbing our dollar sign and our comma. Um, and I'm gonna see if maybe we could just replace it that way. So this is like the format, the basic replace format that I'm a little more used to. Just have the regex, what you want to do, or have whatever. Like this could be like, could just do a dollar sign, and then replace it with the blank. I'm gonna see if this works, but again, if it doesn't work, I don't want to spend too much time on regex. Okay, that did not work. So, what we're gonna do here, first we'll just do the replace method. So we're just gonna replace our dollar sign with nothing. I'm gonna say regex equals false. And then we are, actually, I think I know why this didn't, I'm gonna try one more thing. Um, I think it should be that. No. Okay. So we're just gonna do our dollar sign. And can you replace? Yes, Jenny, that is exactly what I'm thinking is the best way to tackle this with just replace. So we'll do that, and then let's see what that looks like. Now we've gotten rid of our dollar sign. And then we can just also do, I think we can chain these. We will see. Let's chain this. Nope, it only, let's try that. There we go. Okay. So with replace, we took away our dollar signs, we took away our commas, and we've got our clean amount here. So that looks like a float. That looks like a float. However, if we look at our df.info, it's still an object. It's still a string. So even though it like looks correct now, it's still not quite correct. Um, so let's get into NumPy. And actually, before we even get into NumPy, I think that I'm gonna reveal my secret here. You can do something like um amount clean. Oh, no, that is okay. So there we go. Let's do this. This is clean, and then we'll say We'll name this amount really clean. It's terrible data frame naming, but okay. So PD.2 numeric is like a secret weapon. It is having trouble with the dollar signs directly, which I wasn't sure if it would or not. But once you clean things up, if we look at that df.head again, you can see we've got amount really clean. These you know that they're floats because they don't have this extra hanging zero. And if we go back and if we look at our df.info again, you can see we have our float. We have what we need here. Um, so that is like the secret thing. If you look at here we go. Um, you can see there's like some other settings that you can use that are really helpful. You can use the big one is errors. You can either coerce them or raise them. So like if there's something that you think should be a number, but it's not but it's not, and Python can't convert it, you can either ignore it, like set it to none, or you can be like, please, like, stop the whole process if something's wrong. I think, let's see what the default is. The default is raise. So by default, it's going to tell you if anything can't be converted to a number. So it's super helpful, to just be like a very straightforward way to convert things. Um, and we can see, I'm not sure if NumPy has um I think that pandas is probably like the primary way to do this. Um NumPy is helpful to like make sure you're handling nulls correctly sometimes, or if you're like referencing a null value, like you're trying to replace a null value, you can use np.nan is a super helpful NumPy thing, and I find that that's one of the things that I use most often in pandas. But for this, pd.toNumeric is going to be the most straightforward way to get your data set into numbers. Um, any questions there? And I'm going to clean this up a little bit. We're going to just recast amount, and then we're just going to do amount clean here. So now when we look at it, I guess we still have the old ones. I'm going to re-import it. Um, and just run all of these again and make sure that that is a little cleaner. Should be amount now. There we go. All right, now we've got our amount clean. All right, Miriam. So we have columns, one clean, one is really clean. Yes, exactly. Great question. So, to explain a little bit what I just like rushed through very quickly, you could drop a specific column. So, I think that that's drop. I think this is it. Um, and let's say I want to drop like my original amount. I think it's this. Let's see if that worked. Um, awesome. Okay, yeah, that worked. So to just get rid of a column, you can just do df.drop and then the column name, and then axis equals 1 refers to like the axis of columns. Axis equals 0 would refer to like the index. So these 0, 1, 2, 3, 4s. And that's how you can easily get rid of a column. What I did when I was like scrolling back up and just redoing the whole thing, I find that sometimes with these kinds of data analyses, it's easier to sort of just like make sure that everything is in the same place that I think it's going to be, especially in a notebook where like things that you delete or like change in your code, that doesn't mean that the actual data frame changed. Like for example, um, when we went back through it, it still had, even if I, let me rephrase this. Um, Even if I deleted this right now, like if I just, I'll copy it, I could still look at df.head, um, and I would have that amount clean, even though you can't see the cell anymore. So I find it helpful sometimes to just like start from the beginning and be like, all right, where am I? And make sure everything's run. Um, Any questions on that? On converting to numeric, and then also like dropping stuff, notebook management. Okay. Awesome. So now we've got so we've done the amount changes. Handle null values is our last one. And turn empty values into nulls if there's any empty values. Empty values and non-nulls are generally the same thing. Sometimes you'll have an empty string though. Like instead of none, it's just like it looks like nothing, but it's not technically a none type. Um, so we can take a look at this. These are all, if we go back to our df.info, which really handy method. Great job mentioning it earlier. I think that was Jenny who did that. Um, you can see that these are all non-nulls. So we don't need to worry about dropping nuns. So we've got those handled. There aren't any in this data set. If we were doing that, we would probably do something like df.dropna, and that would drop all our nulls. We can test this in a similar way to how we did with our duplicates, and just see if the length of our um, dropped, if the data set dropped all its nulls, would it still be the same length as our original data set? And the answer here is true. So we can look at it this way, or we can look at it in the info up here. Um, so those are two different ways to do that. We can also check for empty values. So one way, let's just check for empty values in, let's say, salesperson. Um, so here I'm going to use just like a filter, and see if there's any place where salesperson is none. Could do the same thing for like country or anything else. Um, but usually, not always, sometimes it's messy, but usually you'll if there's not nulls, you're probably in like a um pretty decent place. There's other things like to check for if you're using a business data set. Sometimes their nulls or like none or unavailable values are encoded in numbers as like 999 or 9999 or 99999. Uh, so things to look out for if you're seeing a lot of those throwing things off. Um, we can also do df.describe again here. It's a good thing to do now that we've got everything cleaned up. And look at summary statistics for our newly cleaned columns. So for those amounts, you can now see like the average amount of money per chocolate order, or per row rather, along with like standard deviations and things like that. Um, any more questions about cleaning? And oh my gosh, we have 10 minutes left. So sorry, y'all. You're asking so many good questions and suggesting so many great things. Is there any specific part that folks want to get to in terms of like analysis? Do we have to format the column names when cleaning? Great question, Jenny. You can do something like df.rename, and then I could say like, I don't know, amount clean, or I could say salesperson to like seller is how I would do that. Um, and then in place is true. I wanted to stay in this data set, and access equals 1. Again, that's just referring to my columns. And so now when I look at it, it should be seller. So you can do it if you do it, that's the way to do it. You can strip the spaces if you want to. It really depends on what your ultimate use case is, right? So if you're building something for like database purposes that you're going to be um, pulling out of and like writing a lot of code to get, sometimes it's a lot easier to have those like underscores instead of spaces. So for example, like boxes shipped is one example of that. I think that's the main example in this data set. Um, you could do boxes underscored shipped, but on the flip side, if your use case is like to generate charts for like your boss who doesn't code and you want it to like look clean and look pretty, then sometimes those spaces make sense too. It really depends kind of what the use case is. Um, any other questions? I can kind of outline. I think in the last couple minutes, um, I'm just going to outline sort of the way that I approach analysis generally. So I'm a journalist. I write code for stories and tools and templates and things like that. And I'm always looking for a story in a data set, and I think that that's like sort of the main thing that you're going to be doing with any kind of Python analysis, in some way or another. So what I find really helpful to do is kind of think through what are the questions that I want to ask here. So um, so one question, does anyone have ideas on, and I will answer that question in a second, Natalia. Does anyone have ideas on what questions we could ask this data? Where did our data go? Here we go. This data that has like product, amount, boxes shipped, how many boxes shipped in a certain year. So we could even do how many boxes shipped each year. What else? Top 10 sellers. Um, Nice. What else? Maybe one more. I'll kind of outline the way I think through the code part. Popular chocolate. Okay. Most popular kind of chocolate. Nice. Okay. And then like from here, so these will be like my questions. And then I'll make a heading for each one of those. So like um how many boxes shipped each year? And then I'll think through what do I need the data to look like in order to answer this question? So in this case, that might be like, okay, we want a column for year and a column that shows the count of boxes in each of those years. Um, and so then we would go through, we don't want to generate code, although this is a good way to talk to artificial intelligence agents as well as being very specific about what questions you want to answer and then thinking through, critically what might the data look like to get that answer. So then we would probably do a group by here. So like df.group by year, or that would be, it looks like actually we would probably want to make like we would want to grab the year from this date. So it would be date time. I think we'd probably want to make a new column. Um, so then I would just like write out steps. We'll do this in the markdown too. Steps one, make a new column for year. Two, um, group by year. And then three, get the sum of the boxes column for each year. Um, And you can do this with any of these questions. Same with like top 10 chocolate sellers, would be a very similar kind of setup. How many, like, who were the top chocolate sellers would probably be like the way that I would phrase that. Um, who were the top 10 chocolate sellers? And then what do we want the data to look like? We want a column for seller name and a column that shows the um dollar amount. Well, then we would have to choose like, do we want the dollar amount or the boxes? So this process is like really helpful um uh to like really clarify what you're looking for as well. All right. To answer your question, Natalia, I don't typically upload my recordings unless folks ask. So if you have a specific recording, I'll share that in Slack. I'm very cautious about like the direction that AI is going and how recordings might be used long term. But I also really want to make sure that everyone that that could benefit from these sessions is able to. So just let me know in the thread or feel free to DM me, and I can just drop those in the Slack directly. Um, Apart from a couple that I forgot to record. Um, any other questions about this? I know we spent a lot of time on the cleaning, didn't have a lot of time for the analysis part. But I will upload this notebook, just kind of like outlining, this process generally. Jenny, awesome. I will upload this one then. I'll upload that in the thread that I announced the session in, along with this notebook. And I'll try and maybe even fill out before I upload it tonight, a couple more of like the actual analysis bits, so that you can kind of see a full set of how this might translate into a pandas analysis. Um, Other questions? Any last thoughts? Complaints? All right. Thank you all so much. Really appreciate your time as always. Feel free to pop in Slack anytime if any more questions come up, and have a great evening.